things. So the golf course was designed around the concept of needing to hit the ball up out of something and into something else, you see, possibly into a high hoop. Because originally the game was like basketball and it would have been up here. So that's why I think Pall Mall is an actual ancestor of golf. Yo, what is happening, my people? And how are you doing? And guys, don't change away till you've watched to the very end. Very entertaining video. If you play golf, if you play basketball, if you play croquet, billiards, hockey, you're going to find out a common ancestor where all these things seem to come from, because all these games are, over history, they're interchangeable. They're actually interchangeable games. You see, what I'm wearing is I believe it's a golfing hat, is it not? And you know, I'm kind of dressed like a medieval jester by wearing this. What golfers wear is very medieval. We're going to explore all of this. We're going to explore the mystery of Pall Mall, this game which may have inspired golf, or simply may be one of these derivatives that goes back to ancient times along with golf, hockey, croquet. Let's check it out. This is incredible. I can't believe it. Hey, nice people. How you doing? So in this video, we're going to talk about how golf is basically a hybrid of a Dutch game called KOLF, and with basically the rules of Pall Mall. And this is an extinct game. We don't even know the rules, but basically it's a precursor to basketball. There's a hoop up there. It's a precursor to golf. You're hitting it towards that hoop. I reckon the clubs are not necessarily shown correctly, because you're not going to use a flat club to hit it upwards. Hence you need something more like a golf club. We're going to get into this mystery, the mystery of this extinct game of Pall Mall. It was an ancient game 400 years ago. Now no one even knows the rules. They're forgotten. Looks like the books have been destroyed. Let's get into this, people, and we can explain the origin of squash, golf, basketball, lacrosse, hockey. One is a type of ground billiards, and another is an aerial sport. And there's two games. And these two games, over thousands of years, they keep changing. You keep changing the equipment, you keep changing the implements. We don't know why we use the golf clubs the way they are. Pall Mall explains it. We'll explain that later on. It's so good.
Well, so what we're doing, lovely peoples, is tracing the murky origins of golf, and what I think golf seems to be, and they're not talking about this, it seems to be this kind of ground billiards hockey style game, which was played in Holland, and it's prehistoric, mixed with the rules of Pall Mall, which is so fascinating. Just absolutely so fascinating. So what we have here is basically, this is a golf court. This is where the name comes from. It means club. It's a club court. So a golf club, right? It's a club because they bring their clubs there. That's where they store the clubs. That's why a club is called, it's a clubhouse. So in Utrecht. So this is, looks like a squash court, does it not? And why would it look like a squash court or even a basketball court? You see these rings? They're all so similar and related, and we just keep changing around the rules, keep changing around whether we use a ball or a stick or whatever we use. And this game, Kolfen, in the Netherlands, it says here it's played by 4 people, where players hit the ball over a certain distance, and the first people to reach their opponent's starting point win. So that's interesting. That's not the golf rules. So the modern golf rules are more like Pall Mall. The rules, the games can last multiple days, and it's like squash because the court's 17.5 meters long, 5 meters wide. The course is marked with looping scoring lines, I guess like a basketball court. Features an ornate wooden post at each end. And it says here, the balls are large and made of rubber or sayet, wool covered with leather. The rubber balls are most popular, but they have to be at least 80 to 100 years old before they're fully mature. The older the rubber gets, the less spring it has. This in turn encourages a better roll, which is what is desired in golf. So it looks like the reason we use these balls that don't bounce in squash is actually because the balls are supposed to be for another sport. Which has so they have a good roll, but they kept using these. For some idiot mixed a ball that doesn't bounce, this golf ball, with a tennis racket and called it squash. And as a result, we've been running around like lunatics on a squash court trying to get to this ball that doesn't bounce because the ball belongs to a different sport. Isn't that fascinating? So that's golf from Holland. Here they're playing it. Golf players on ice, 1625. It's still over a short distance. He doesn't look like he's going to walk very far in those shoes. It's a short distance game, right? And it's not at all like modern golf. How do we get to modern golf? We need pala mala. So ground billiards. Look at ground billiards in 15th century France, 1480. Look at this. It's played on a small court, right? They've got this interesting type of interesting wicker fence, and they've got this court. It's played in a similar way. It's basically KOLF, isn't it? Ground billiards. Ground billiards is KOLF, right? So fascinating. Look at this. Here's ground billiards on a table. Again, you got that spear, and you got this loop. And you got the holes as well. I mean, isn't it so fascinating? Every country has a different version of pool, and here we have it mixed with ground billiards and croquet. That's so fascinating. Let's look over here. An ancient Greek game. Now, this game could be long distance. This is a different type of game. It could be aerial even, because it's an ancient Greek game, similar to and possibly ancestral to ground billiards and field hockey, 600 BC. Now, you have to ignore what the historians say. They say it's similar to ground billiards, field hockey. Look, so they're playing naked, so they're obviously running around a bit. This is the Olympic period, 600 BC. This looks like a rough sport. I would say this is a very active sport. So this could be similar to hockey. I reckon. Look, they're sparring. This is hockey, type of hockey. So they write ground billiards. Look, honestly, billiards, and they're naked. Okay, sure. So you got to take with a grain of salt what you see. Sometimes written on Wikipedia. As for golf itself, it's played over long distance. How do we get to this stage? How did the Scots come up with this? I reckon they simply integrated the rules of pala mala with a ground billiards type game, and therefore they made it aerial, and that's how they did it. This is so fascinating. Look, here we have a type of golf, again from China. So this was a Eurasian prehistoric game. They've even got little golf flags here. And these are sticks or they're holes there, I'm not sure. But it's on a court, so it's a billiards type game. Obviously, they're not running around in these clothes. It's a billiards type gentlemanly sport. Here we have the Mcdonald boys playing golf, 18th century. So this is, I guess, more like modern golf, although you don't know if it's hockey or what he's doing, but anyway. And of course, I guess it's made for marshes and swamps or something. That's why it's a Scottish type game because of the undulating terrain, like in Scotland or the Highlands or whatever, or the Lowlands even. Just fascinating. If we look up, so let's look up this thing called the Golf Book. It's a book from the 1540s. It's done in what is now Belgium. Which was the Spanish Netherlands, the southern part, which retained its monarchy, and it's done by a guy called Simon Benning in Bruges, and it's an insight into life in the 1540s in Henry VIII's time, at the end of the Middle Ages. Basically, it's just fascinating. Look at this. So what they're doing is this guy's chopping down a tree. These guys are discussing things. Is that guy a priest? He's wearing white, possibly, and he's talking to a parishioner. And someone's going into the castle, Renaissance type castle with these roofs. These are new buildings in this time, brand new buildings. This guy's cutting a tree down. Here a fence has come down, and this guy is digging in the garden, and he's meeting the lady. He's taking his hat off. Look at that, you see. So let's look in the next one. And it's got people on a gondola going, on one of the canals in a gondola. It's just fascinating, and these people going into the castle. Here we have people with a horse, farmers, etc., etc. Some interesting agricultural equipment here. What is it? What's going on? Who knows? A nice house. It doesn't look too different from houses today. But in the first one, look what they're doing down here. Look at it. Look at this. Look what they're doing. Do you see what they're doing here? Let's look what they're doing. Let's see if I can zoom in without it going crazy. It doesn't want to zoom out. I don't know what's going on. But okay, so look, they're playing golf, but look, they're playing on a little field. All right. So let's get to golf costume. So if you look at golf costume, it's almost prehistoric, isn't it? It's the tartan things that the Tamarin mummies wore. But it's got diamonds as well. It's always got these diamonds and things. You see, where does that come from? And the closest I'm aware of is kind of jester costume. Because you got their pom-pom hats that the golfers wear, and you got the diamonds and things. And this is a type of, this wasn't unique to jesters, but it was a type of medieval clothing. Look at, it was all over prehistoric Eurasia, because here is an Indonesian jester from Java. And this could be mixed up with ideas from ancient India. They've invaded Java in prehistoric times. He's got the diamonds. It's interesting, but he's got a tall hat almost like ancient Egypt. It's interesting, isn't it? He's a jester, and the jester is always actually a wise man, because here he's the only one. Here the jester is portrayed as the only one that's troubled when the kingdom is being invaded and everyone else is having a party. And the reason for that is the jester he knows all the histories. The histories are called jests, and the jests are recited. Ancient chronicles are made for being, they're entertainment. They're made for being recited. Recited to who? Probably to the king, the lords, the audience. And that's what the jester did. He wasn't just telling jokes. He was a historian. So fascinating. Isn't this fascinating? What do you think of that? Just brilliant. Oh my God, just brilliant. Okay, nice people. So, what is this Pall Mall stuff anyway? And what it is, it's actually quite interesting. It was this is the thing. It was 400 years ago. This was called an ancient game, just like golf is called an ancient game now. Ancient rules of golf. Golf is modern, 1600s basically. But this game is extinct. No one plays it, to my knowledge. A few people do. It's like basketball. It's got a hoop down the end. It's actually got a hoop in the sky down the end, and you have to hit it into that hoop. And this game is, we don't even know the rules. We don't even know the rules. This is artistic license. They're smacking the ball into that hoop up there. And you see the mallets are flat. I think you'd need graduated mallets. We'll get to that with a graduated gradient to hit it upwards. So this is the ancestor of golf. This is why golf is long distance, not on a court. And you see one group of people like far away over there, because it's actually stretched out over it's actually a long distance. It's actually 600 yards from one end to the other. That's quite a long way. This is so fascinating, people. So fascinating. And it means ball mallet. Yeah, okay. It means ball mallet. And the target hoops are made of straw. And it was introduced from France into Scotland and then into England. So it's been in Scotland for a long time before it got to England. So that explains the parallel development, why they just came up with golf, because they got these vast open spaces. Why not just play on the vast open spaces, look at the scenery, you know? Why do you have to have a court to do this, you know what I mean? And this is how they came up with golf. They incorporated the Pall Mall rules into this ground billiards game called, Dutch game called KOLF, which is prehistoric. Just fascinating. This is just so good. And so basically, so there's a Pall Mall in London, Pall Mall in London, a street which is I know the street is actually about 600 yards long. That's why I'm saying 600 yards, and it's south of St James Square, a nice little square. I reckon I must have walked around here. This looks familiar to me. I gotta say, and basically. A Frenchman called John Bernal laid out a court for playing Pall Mall on the south side of St James Square, London, area known as St James Field. A year or two later, Bernal died, and the king's shoemaker had built a house on this land, which he was ordered to demolish by Candlemas Day. Eventually, the Pall Mall court was rebuilt. So this is, around the time of the English Revolution, just before the Revolution, and then Charles II in the 1660s. For more, and this bloke received a grant in 1635 for the furnishing of malls, bowls, scoops. So scoops are probably the mallets for hitting upwards. And other like some of the golf clubs look like scoops. We're going to get to that. And other necessities for the playing of Pall Mall within the grounds at St James Fields, etc. According to the ancient order of the game, an ancient order. I mean, look, you know what? These books have been destroyed. That is the conclusion that I come to. The books must have been destroyed because they're not around anymore. You look up gameplay, you know what it says? It actually says the object is to strike a boxwood ball of unknown circumference. And then they say a modern croquet ball is this much, which equates to this much, with a heavy wooden mallet down an alley through a hoop, through the hoop with as few hits as possible. And it was a high hoop. That's the thing. Many references tell us the ball was about 12 inches or 30 centimeters in diameter. As it would be, why not? It's like basketball. However, it is known this is not correct. Okay, so we know that the ancient sources are not correct. Excuse me? Is there something wrong with that statement, right? As a ball that size would be far too heavy to lift. You see, this is how spastic historians are. Honestly, some of us historians are spastic. Note the ball in the engraving. It is thought the ball was more likely 7 centimeters. So it always has to be this size, and no one's allowed to come up with a different ball ever. See, this is how historians work. It differed from truco, especially in its more extreme length of playing area, suggesting a closer relationship to golf than other derivatives of ground billiards. Well, more likely, this became golf. This turned into golf. This is the golfer's swing. Pall Mall, illustrated in 1891. They'd stopped playing by the time this was illustrated. A game wherein a round box bowl is with a mallet struck through a high arch of iron standing at either end of an alley, which he that do it in the fewest blows or at the number agreed on wins. That's golf. That's it. The Scots took this game, put it in their open fields, and called it golf. And they used, and we'll get to all this. So good. This is so good. Pall Mall, London. Who would have played this game? We'll look at it. The area, it's a fashionable street. High-class shopping, 18th century, gentlemen's clubs, Athenaeum, Reform theatres, travellers' clubs. So clubs headquarters, Royal Automobile Club, because he put the golf clubs in the club. That's why it's called a club. KOLF is club, you see. KOLF, yeah. So good. 0.64 kilometres long. That's the length for the Pall Mall Court. Okay? Oh, the Pall Mall Field. I mean, this goes on and on. You can read this for yourself, but it goes on and on and on. It is so interesting. So good. Oh, there we go. Oh, an old view of Pall Mall. Oh my God, look. So this is the court. This is the old Pall Mall Court. So you hit it all the way down that massive distance. Just amazing from around here. So wow, 1763. Oh, yes. Wow.
Oh, yeah. Oh, hi. So, you cannot buy a Palomala kit, so I thought I'll make one. So, there's a hoop. You need a high hoop. You hang it on one end of a Palomala court, which is even longer than the 400 yards of a golf hole. It's more like 600, 700 yards. Then what you would do is, you would presumably get a mallet and start hitting it through the hoop. But there's a problem, you see. The high hoop is on one end, and as you get closer to the high hoop, I reckon you would need to start using different mallets. I reckon you'd need to start angling the mallets. So I made one with an angle. It's a very precipitous angle, and as you get closer and closer, you want the angle to become more and more precipitous like this until you're using essentially a sand wedge, right? And then you can get it up. You can hit it up high and through that hoop. That's how Palomala works. And they don't even talk about this sequence of mallets you would use, that you would actually use different mallets, you know what I mean? So when I look at the golf kit, suddenly the golf kit makes sense if it wasn't originally for golf. Because the golf kit is really weird. I mean, golfers do things that doesn't make any sense. For example, 100 years ago, a guy started wearing a glove, and he thought the glove on his hand makes him hit better. Since then, every single golfer you go out, they all got this spastic glove on their hand, and they're not even professional golfers. They don't need it, you know what I mean? So, let's have a look. Hope I haven't insulted anyone, I just can't help it sometimes. So here we got some things. So what we do, we start with number one, right? So number one is a driver, right? So what we do, we drive. So this is for hitting a long distance. It's relatively flat. The angle's almost flat. It's slightly upwards. And basically you just smack it directly on the ball, right? And as you get closer and closer to your target, the angle actually, you just need to hit it less fast. So it's a little bit a lighter weight version of a driver. But the angle is almost the same. And as you get closer and closer, then you start to use the irons. So what you do is you start with, say, the number, something that looks like a driver, except it's kind of flatter, and now the angle changes. So, but it looks like it's originally supposed to be possibly a more lightweight version because it's thinner, right? So, but it's not. It's about the same weight because things have changed. But as you get closer and closer, the angle changes. So this is a number. What's this? A number 4. So a number 5. Let me get closer to the camera to explain this. A number 5 has a more precipitous angle. So there's a number 4. There's a number 5. Now let's get a number 6. Let's just get a 7. And the angles change. You see number 7 is more precipitous. And eventually you get to, if you're stuck in the hole, you start to use the sandwich, which is a very precipitous angle used for hitting it right out of that hole. So you you basically just hit it direct on there and it goes upwards, or it's just, boom, it's going to fly upwards, right? So you got to ask the question, why are golfers, as they approach the hole, wanting to hit the ball upwards? And the golf courses have been designed around the idea that the golfer wants to hit the ball upwards as he gets closer. They've even put most of the sand traps, they're everywhere on the course, but they don't annoy you until you get to the green because they're right next to the green. So the golf course was designed around the concept of needing to hit the ball up out of something and into something else, you see, possibly into a high hoop, because originally the game was like basketball and it would have been up here. So that's why I think Pall Mall is an actual ancestor of golf. And we've seen the quotes. The quotes show that it's similar to golf. And people say, oh, it's an ancestor of croquet. No. Croquet is more like billiards. This is a different game. This is Pall Mall is, it's long distance. You're not going to compare this to croquet. It's a different sport. Croquet is more like billiards. But it just shows you Wikipedia. These people don't know nothing, guys. That's right, guys. They don't know nothing.
To patronise me because my furniture is centuries old. This is at least from the 1980s, which is obviously 1 century ago. And I even have this 1,000-year-old Bayer tapestry here, which is obviously, if you look it up, it's 1,000 years old. And I would throw away this 1,000-year-old tapestry and buy IKEA furniture for the refrigeration look, which everyone wants, and then I'll dress like a gangster and put it on Instagram. So you need to help me out so I can achieve that status. This too is obviously from the 1990s, 100 years old, because that's last century.
Oh, yeah. Oh, hi. So,